This is a message to all my supporters of this podcast. I'm introducing a new supporters program. You can contribute a small amount as a one-off payment to show your love for this podcast. Thank you in advance for all your contributions. I just wanted to let you know before we start the podcast that I am doing an online podcast course, how to be able to create, get your guests, scale it and monetize it. So please do go to abmpodcastcourse.co.uk and go into the contact us bit. I'm looking for new people to be able to be a podcast creator and really to be able to develop their skills and knowledge into a podcast. So as I said, go to abmpodcastcourse.co.uk and sign up. Thanks.
This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and people in their careers. We will delve into their journey to success, key life milestones, and go deep into their area of expertise. This podcast will inspire and educate with great guests. Get ready to learn from other people's successes and failures. Today we have Christian Ross, who is a managing broker in Atlanta and a serial real estate volunteer. Hello, Christian. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing good. How are you, Mark?
Yeah, very good. I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining me today. Right. So I was just saying before we started that in London, we're back into lockdown and it's pretty difficult in COVID at the moment. How has COVID affected your business?
You know, it's been very interesting because we in real estate have been deemed an essential service. So we've actually been working straight throughout. Now, that was not the case for a lot of states in the U.S., but for mine in Georgia and the Atlanta metro area, we were able to sell. So we were still out showing. I always had a bag full of wipes and masks and gloves and booties. And it's really just our new way of doing business. And it looks like for the very near future.
Were you doing virtual viewings as well, sort of videos, or was it all just with PPE that you were doing?
Yes, a lot of virtual showings. I actually have one later on today with a client who's in Washington, D.C. So lots of virtual showings.
And how's that affected your business? Because I think it is more challenging. So I've got a couple of properties. I'm looking to buy a few more later on this year or early next year. And virtual viewings are great to give you a sort of guide, but you can't really assess without walking around and seeing if there's damp or the boiler's a little bit old or something like that. I'm talking from a residential point of view anyway. So it is more of a challenge. How have you overcome that? How have you tried to overcome that?
I've really overcome that by being very detailed in my showings. Like I show, look, there looks like this was mold that was scraped off on the windowsill, or look, there looks like there's a brown patch. So the pictures are always going to look pretty. I like to call it real estate catfish when you walk in the door sometimes and you're like, wait a minute, this does not look anything like the pictures. So I try to point out what those catfish points might be. But I am definitely very detailed. And actually, I have clients this morning. I shot a video Friday. They looked over it this weekend and they pointed out some of those things and said, hey, can you go back and check this? Because they won't be back in town for like 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So I think just being very detailed gives people more confidence because they wrote an offer because they knew exactly what it looked like they were stepping into.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're over. So is business still good in Atlanta for real estate?
It is. We are busy. Usually August is our slowdown month as people go back to school. It was continuously busy. September pending sales were up 50% year over year. I think people are really making they're analyzing their life and they're putting themselves in the mirror and saying, what do I want right now?
Yeah. And so in the UK, we've also, they call it a bit of a bubble in the UK because I think people went through the first lockdown sort of March to whatever it was, June or July. And then people started thinking about they want a garden because if they were in a flat, it's been very restrictive, or they want a larger garden, or they want to go to the countryside so they can have country walks and that sort of thing.
Yes.
And so it's been super busy in the UK on that. Has there been? Is it the same appetite? Well, because obviously houses are larger in the US, but what's kept up the sort of the want to move houses at the moment?
Yeah, it's definitely that larger outdoor space, or realizing we need 2 offices or maybe even 3 offices. We need some additional space for the kids to play. There's just been so many lifestyle choices. I know one of my clients, they are very dead set. We are in the city, people. We are in the city, people. We're not moving. Yeah. And they called me in August and said, look, we saw a lake house an hour away. And I was just like, what? I was like, wait a minute. Are these the same people that we've been looking for ultra modern in a specific neighborhood for 2.5 years? And now we're going to the lake an hour away? Let's do it. But from their perspective, the buyer, one half of the partners, she has something with her immune system. And so they were just thinking, look, we're not going to be out of this until 2022 in our minds. So we need to just be able to enjoy the next year.
Yeah. It's been a real struggle. And I know people that have moved from, so I'm sort of West London, based in London. And there's a couple of my friends who have gone for the larger country pads. And because people are working from home as well, there's not the commute. Yeah. The commute's not so dire. So for some of these guys, if they go back to London and work in London, they've got an hour and a half commute. But they're saying to me, we just don't know when we're going to be going back. It could easily be going into 2021 and well into 2021. So they prefer to do the move now and have that sort of enjoyment, and then sort of overcome the commute if it ever occurs again. Because the new normal, this word that people have sprung up with, this new normal, might be that you never go back to working in offices in the same way that we did.
It's true, but it's interesting too, because Google here, Google is headquartered in California, but here they actually have taken probably 50% of a new building. So there's this one building that's coming up. It is now 100% occupied by a law firm and Google. Right. That's it. And to think that they did not pull out of their leases or say, hey, we're having a different thought. I think it shows that companies are definitely thinking about space differently. But they realize that they still need to have that community inside, even if it's people coming in 1 to 2 days a week. Yeah. I think we'll definitely see people going back.
Yeah, it's interesting. The commercial side is interesting because I was working in what we call Canary Wharf in London, which is a big sort of skyscrapers of banking mainly, but lots of different industries are there. And it's interesting, some of the companies are, where their lease is running out, they're downsizing. They're getting sharing, as you say, sharing office space where they would probably have a whole space to themselves. They're now looking at sort of part of a building or half of a building, because, as you say, people will probably come back to the office at some stage, but it might be, as you say, two times a week or something like that. So they don't need the huge office space that they previously did. I think the commercial side is where I think residential will continue as it is, but the commercial side is like, because in Canary Wharf, as I said, it was mainly banks and sort of international banks, but lots of tech companies that are based in London are picking up relatively reasonably priced rent for big office space, because some of these estate agents in the UK are looking to just fill, because people are moving themselves from these long-term like rental agreements.
It's going to be so interesting to watch, and really interesting to watch just all over the world of where work goes and where home goes. Like it's going to be completely different. I think it's one of those things where you're going to see in business classes where they're studying, when you have something as prolific as this that happens, how do just all the stations of life change?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's go back to your early days where you did a degree in media arts and political science in Atlanta. So just tell me a little bit about your upbringing and why you chose those subjects.
So I wanted to be a journalist when I was a child. If I was growing up right now, I would not want to be a journalist. But back in the day, I really wanted to be a journalist, and I just thought it was so important that people were telling other people's stories, and I just love that, and I still love that. So I wanted to be a journalist. I went to school. I majored in public relations and political science, and I realized in that maybe public relations and political science could be married, and that's when I learned about public affairs. Yeah. And because I thought maybe I want to run for office one day. And I think it's just more so I knew I wanted to be a change agent in some way. I didn't know what it would be, but I thought it would always be tied to politics. So even now, even though I'm in real estate, I still volunteer with our government affairs and understanding all of these decisions that are being made. How do they affect private property owners? How do they affect neighborhoods and communities and education? Because the reality is your address dictates a lot of where you go in life and the opportunities that you have. Yeah. And a lot of that starts with whatever legislation there is. So I really thought I would be a journalist. I am not. I am in my own mind.
Well, that's really interesting. We've got a couple of avenues to go down here, but one thing which I just want to talk to you about is, so you thought you might run for office.
Yeah.
What was your motivation as sort of selfless, that you wanted to serve your community, or what was the drive there?
Yeah, it was definitely serving the community. I just felt like there weren't enough people who look like me just in leadership. So I was like, what does it look like to be someone younger at the time? Younger and educated and just wanting to serve. What does that look like to make sure that you're giving a voice to kids who they don't have one? The reality is, they can write letters to Santa, they can write letters to the legislators, but no one is paying children as much attention as they are adults. Yeah. And to think that I could kind of be that conduit to help sure that kids who may be in a different type of situation, that it's harder to climb the ladder and it's harder to get those opportunities. How do we bring them there? That was just always something that was really interesting to me.
And we'll jump into, because I know you've looked into leadership and you've looked into diversity and how to help people and represent people there. So we will come to that a little bit later on. But I just wanted to, so your first role was media relations at MARTA, which was PR and public affairs. So for you initially thought public affairs was going to be, because I'll give you a little background on myself. I did a politics degree, like a political science degree. I then never wanted to go into government. That was never my thing. I didn't fancy that sort of publicity. But was thinking about going into government affairs and public affairs, which was something that I contemplated for a while. And actually, I got to the point where the inefficiency of government made me incredibly frustrated. And that's why I went into business and worked for corporates for 14 years and now an entrepreneur myself. I've taken that avenue. But when you were thinking of doing public affairs, and because essentially, I'm going to be a little bit controversial, it's government lobbying, isn't it? It's a nice way of saying that you're trying to influence people within government.
Yes,
with a particular, whatever the angle is, whether it's smoking, like the tobacco industry, or guns, or whether it's helping diverse children, or whatever it is, essentially you're trying to influence government. Were there skills that you used there that you think has helped you all along your career?
Oh, definitely. And it's interesting. When I was in college, I actually interned for our governor here in the public affairs office. And that's when I realized, wait a minute, you can lose your job every 4 years. This isn't, this might not be good.
Great, isn't it?
I was like, let's think of something else. But yeah, I definitely did. When it just comes down to the relationship building, it's especially in that realm, it's so important. And you just see how everyone just kind of maneuvers around each other. So the relationship building, I think, analysis of understanding the depth of like, okay, how is this attached to this? How is this connected? And then writing. I definitely consider myself a strong writer, and your writing skills are definitely necessary. And, but I think everything really goes back to the relationship building and also just knowledge building. Like, are you steadily a student? Are you always trying to learn? And do you not think that you're the only one who knows it all? Because we're not. So I think those are the biggest skills.
Yeah, I'd agree. I talk a lot on my podcast about growth mindset and being able to be an active and eternal educator. Learning is massive. Do you think that's helped you the further your career's gone on having that mentality of always wanting to learn, always improving?
For sure. I think that is a huge contributor to just the success that I've had and the relationships that I've had. Just understanding of, like my clients in this industry, let me learn about this. This is so interesting. Or, asking them questions about their background. Or if it's even learning a new area of town, why are people coming here instead of this neighborhood? It's constant learning. And then, of course, the different lawsuits that come up, studying those lawsuits, like, why did someone sue? How can we avoid this? There's the risk management side as well.
Yeah. So you moved from there to an account executive at Investor Relations and Acquisitions. So there was a slight shift on emphasis at that part of your career. What was investing and acquisitions just an area that you were interested in, or was it one of those sort of lucky breaks that you ended up there?
I was just about to say, not at all. I was not interested. I had an opportunity, and a friend just said, I think you should talk to my other friend. He does He does condo conversions. And I think you'd be interested in that. And I was just like, I have no idea about contract conversions. Like I've been condo conversions. I've been in my own lane, just working. And I had a conversation and I just said, why not? So it's one of those things that I think whenever opportunity knocks, you just have to say, why not? Unless you have complete anchors, like you are getting ready to send your children to college, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to take a step out of your journey, and I want to ask you a question about, do you have a morning routine?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show. Meet the future of healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health. Actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match your disease with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe, and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, meet the future of healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
I do. I want it to get better. I have been reading all of these articles lately where it seems like people have jumped from waking up at 5 a.m. to waking up at 3 a.m.
Yeah, I know.
And I want to be that person. I do. Yeah. But I'm not. I'm the person who hits snooze 25 times before I get up, and I know exactly how many times that is. So my morning routine, I get up, and actually the worst thing ever, I look at Twitter first.
Okay.
I love Twitter. So I look at Twitter first for I give myself 5 minutes. That's like my fun time to see what crazy things people are saying. And then I go and I just get up. I read. I always read. I'm reading 2 books right now. So I read one in the morning and one in the evening before I shut down for the night. Right. And then I'm really showering, getting dressed. And when I'm getting dressed, I actually have a video on from my coach. So I'm listening to something that one of their podcasts or videos from the week or the week before. So I'm catching up on those. And then I start my calls, and I really try not to look at my email until 9:30 a.m. That is my absolute goal.
So that's good. That's because I've done on my podcast, which I try and call out people for morning routine guilt, and essentially these guys like Tim Ferriss and various other people are saying that you should wake up 4-3. Mark Wahlberg, who wakes up at 2:00 in the morning, which is just like, and I honestly think they've got an angle to make you feel guilty. And if you wake up at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, that's all good. Like,
Yeah, I feel good.
I've got a little bit more sleep. I feel much better. I think it's important because I think it's interesting that you're trying to build other things part of your morning routine. So I don't look at my email. I don't look at anything on my phone until I've seen the kids. We go and have breakfast together. And then I'll sort of shower and sort of get myself in the right frame of mind to start work. But it's interesting because, like, for me, that's a nice gentle start to the morning, and then at 9 o'clock, at sort of 8:30, 9 o'clock, I then kick in and sort of my day in essence begins. But I think we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves. I think we're all too hard on ourselves when you hear on Instagram people like Mark Wahlberg, who wakes up at 2 a.m. to do an exercise. I just think it's
a lot. And I mean, it's interesting too, because those videos that I was telling you about, I was listening to one, and then I looked at the corresponding PDF with it, and it had her day, and it said 3 a.m. wake up. And I was just like, well, wait a minute, we are completely off balance, and we're not in alignment right there, because I'm not waking up at 3 a.m.
But do you work?
I'm a late owl anyway.
Yeah. See, this is so it's now 5 to 8 now in the evening, and I'm happy to keep going for another hour or two.
That's how I am. I can just go.
Yeah. It's early in the morning, not so much, but like in the evenings, I'm all good. All right. So thank you for that. Something I found absolutely fascinating. So you did do a communication consultant at Redmond Law, but I'm more interested about when you became the managing partner at SheEO, which was an exclusive female cigar accessory business.
Yes, I feel like that was in entrepreneurship. I actually helped a client get commercial space for his cigar lounge. And we were there, and we were really trying to teach people cigar culture. And so it was a client turned really good friend. And then I had another friend that was there, and we were like, all of these things are geared towards men. Everything, the lighters, the hold, like everything is geared towards men. So we went and we started thinking, and then we did our business plan, and we sent away for some samples, and we talked to import expert people here, and we were just really like, let's go. So we started hosting events, females only, teaching them just the art of cigar smoking and what to do. And then we actually had lighters or torches, as they call them. We had torches, and we had cigar holders, and we actually met the other day because we were like, we need to do this. I got so busy with real estate, but we were like, we need to rekindle this, because now there is a huge female cigar smoking community. Like, really? It's massive.
In Atlanta, or in the US?
In the US, and definitely in Atlanta, we probably have more. We have a lot of cigar shops, a lot.
Do you still enjoy a cigar from time to time?
I do. I have not, though, during COVID. As soon as I heard, I was like, I'm just going to protect these little baby lungs of mine and just, I was like, I'll see you whenever. So I just look at them and smell them.
So that's really fascinating that you in essence, you would sort of trailblaze in there, because as you say, the cigar smoking industry is, or my knowledge of it is so male orientated, big corporate America, men sitting in clubs smoking cigars and drinking whiskey.
Exactly.
How is the women's version of that then? What's different about it?
I think it definitely looks the same. However, there's the component where it's also a little bit more networking with it. Really trying to be around like-minded females. Like, okay, obviously you're here for possibly the same reason. Why are you here? So kind of a little inquisitiveness, if you will. But I think also too, I also think a lot of women go to cigar lounges to find male perspectives on things.
Okay.
I think they really feel like the man who's a cigar smoker is at a certain level, has, you know, a certain discernment or taste in things, and they want to find out what that perspective is. And this gives them a front row seat to do that without being creepy, if you will.
Fantastic. I think it's a thing. It's not a thing in the UK. I don't think it's a thing. I've not
Really.
I think you should try. Maybe we'll speak afterwards and we can get it marketed over into London and see what happens. So then you became a managing broker. Now, I know what it is because I've done my research, but just tell my audience, like, what is a managing broker?
So a managing broker, we are responsible for contract compliance. If there's any disputes between parties, we help to solve those. We are also first in line to help our agents with education, understanding any legal changes, really helping them be the best advocates they can be for clients. But we are truly that first stop when it comes to legally any challenges, making sure that the contracts are correct and that we understand the situation that's going on between the parties.
And that's wholly on real estate for you, or
yes,
but you obviously there's managing brokers in other industries as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, but you specialize in real estate. Okay, awesome. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about and go deep in is, so when I was doing some reading about you, you were talking about how you think leadership. Well, now I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think leadership in the US is underrepresented with ethnic, religious, diverse, and gender diverse people in their industries?
You know, I definitely think it's 2020 and last year. I think we're seeing more, but I think we can definitely have more voices in whether it's local politics, national politics. I mean, just looking at the presidential race just now, when you look at all the vice presidents, when you look at all the vice presidents up until now, they've looked one way. Yeah. So the reality is, not saying that's just one perspective, but when you have diversity, it's just different voices. And I think sometimes people look at it as, oh, someone's coming after something else. And it's like, no one's coming after anything. They're just saying, hey, include me and include my voice and listen. And that's really, I think, the benchmark of diversity is just listening to other perspectives and voices and backgrounds.
And how do you think listening to diverse voices helps, let's just say, corporate America?
I think it helps because, at the end of the day, people don't realize how this impacts their bottom line. When you're able to reach more people, reach them where they are, help them discover ways to be more successful or solve a problem, that actually impacts your bottom line. You are going to make more money. And I think time after time, again, you see that when people just have different types of outreach, that it translates to those bottom line numbers going up. So I definitely, going back to your question, just to make sure I didn't forget your question that you had just asked me. You were asking about if diversity, what it looks like for corporate America.
Yeah. How do you think now? Because okay, let me just pitch it a little slightly differently. So I worked in Big Four consultancy firms for 14 years, and when I started, the leadership were male and white. And through those 14 years, I spent 12 years with PwC. I saw a difference in the leadership changing to definitely females. The gender, I would say, was completely cracked. There was leadership across the board as females. I think the sort of the religious and ethnic, I think, got better, and I think it's sort of an ongoing project for them. I'm just wondering, from your experience with corporate America, has diversity became an integral part of their sort of business plan and their recruiting plan and their resource plan, which maybe 10, 15 years ago might not have been?
Yeah, I definitely think it's more of a conscious action.
Yes.
And not and I think, again, clarifying that, not meaning that you're putting people in positions who aren't supposed to be there, but that you are truly looking for talent that could fit that role, and that would be able to, of course, do the job, but also just bring another voice and perspective to things. So I definitely think it is greater than it was 10 to 15 years ago. And I remember even, this was probably 9 years ago, I was looking at the market, of course, was still down. We had, after 2008, it was a really long recovery.
Yeah.
And I remember going to a local business owner and just saying, hey, maybe you'll want to franchise your business, your real estate firm. And he specifically looked me dead in my eyes and told me he didn't see someone like me at the location that I was talking about. And I was just kind of like, well, what do you mean someone like me? And he was like, well, just someone like you. And I'm like, I don't, like, please use your words. Like we tell children, use your words, because I do not understand. And so
a good way of treating people that are in like that. If you just speak very slowly and explain to them very simply, they might get it.
Yeah, I'm like, they may get it. And he chose not to clarify, which was fine. He made the point to me, but it's just interesting because then years later, I ended up in a much better position and in the exact area, which is definitely a luxurious area in our city. Mm-hmm. And it just goes to show you that if opportunity closes, another one opens, but people show you who they are and you're like, okay, thank you, and move on.
Absolutely. And how do you think the difference between politics and business is affecting sort of diversity? Because the presidential election, like in the UK, we follow it. It's a big deal. We definitely in the UK follow it. My wife got obsessed by it as well because she did a politics degree as well. So she that was our sort of bonding at the moment. So I heard a lot of people sort of from, and I don't want to get too political because it's not really my angle, but I think it's interesting just for a diversity point of view that when they were talking to people about diverse voting, so in areas where I can't remember what the state was, but they said that a true red, so a Republican state had changed quite considerably in the last 4 years because
that's here.
Is it Atlanta? I thought it was.
Uh-huh.
I thought
it
was. Yeah. So they said how it's changed as a state vote because of people. So from that point of view, how did people come into the area? What was the trigger for a more diverse group joining Atlanta?
We have, if you look at any other city in the U.S., and I deal with a lot of international clients, and they have continuously looked at Atlanta as a great safeguard market to invest in because we have the busiest airport in the world here. So if people are thinking from moving from different places, you can quickly catch a flight out to Heathrow or Dubai or wherever, and it can be direct. We have numerous Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies here. Delta is here. Southern Company is here. You have so many companies that are here. And actually, there is a large influx of German companies that are setting up large offices in the Atlanta area. And then you have the cost of living. So when you look at having everything that a big city affords, and then you have California where you can pay incredibly high taxes and prices, or New York, the same thing, without that tax structure that you previously had in place.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, where do I go? And so people are looking at the map and they're choosing between us and like 3 other cities. And so I think between that influx of people who have come in from California and from New York, and then people who have been steadily moving here over the years, it's really turned the tide where it looked really close the last election. And then this election, it was very prominent.
That's really interesting. And so you've spent most of your time in Atlanta, haven't you?
Yeah, now I have. It's crazy.
Well, it's interesting because you say when I was doing some reading about you were saying it's an international client base all over the globe, but you've kept your roots in Atlanta. What family? Is it friends? What keeps you in Atlanta?
I have been here. I will definitely be making a second home base of the Dominican Republic very soon.
Lovely.
Every time I go and they stamp my passport, they're like, "How many times do you live here?" And I'm like, "I do not."
But I
um,
will.
but I just love it. It's a close flight. There's so many people. There's so much going on. Everyone's happy. It's like, oh, dance and food. That's it. That's all life is: dance, food, and family. I could sign up for that. But I've just kept Atlanta because of those same reasons. It's a great investment. I own investment properties here as well. It's significant to just get out of town. I mean, 80% of the U.S. is a 2-hour flight away from Atlanta. So that's huge. So to know that I can fly anywhere, my family's up north in Maryland. So I just love it as a home base. It's great quality of life, and you can't beat the price it is. I mean, as much as there are $1 million houses there, you can easily find something for 200,000 quite easily.
And how many properties do you actually own that you rent out?
I own a multifamily that's 26 units.
Right.
And then I have 2 other homes.
Okay. And I'm
going to be buying in the DR very soon.
Okay. And have you found that rental? So we've talked about Atlanta sort of booming and sort of new people coming to the area. Has real estate sort of maintained its price point over the last few years?
It has. It's actually gone up quite significantly, not to the point that Florida would kind of go up 20%, nothing like that. We normally have 6%, and so it may be 4 to 6% increase annually. But right now, we are definitely seeing a little bit more than that. So it'll be interesting to see how the year plays out.
Absolutely. How have mentors or coaches helped you in your career?
I have had so many great mentors, just so many wonderful mentors. I remember when I graduated college, September 11th had just happened right before that. And so no one was hiring. And I went to a program that I had gotten into earlier of my school year for the summer. I went to the program and they were like, look, we're not hiring, but you can call our vice president down in Atlanta, because we were in DC at the time. I called her, set up an appointment. And that day she was just like, come work for me. She was like, I've got a job for you. And I was just like, oh my gosh, now my friends have jobs. This is great. And I actually started selling like Howard Stern and working in radio sales. So, there's only so much that when you constantly kind of get riled up where they're just like, hey, Howard said this. And you're like, but you purchased Howard Stern. So what did you expect? Like, I can't control what comes out of his mouth. And, but I felt like she was such a great mentor because she brought me in and she was just like, this is how you can learn about the radio industry. This is what you can do. Even when I was at MARTA, the 2 women there were in corporate communications. They took me under their wing. They're like, you should be reading this. You should be looking at this. And I feel like good mentors help truly guide people to be the best that they can be. So it's not, do this. But hey, if you want to do this, you should look at this. I love the fact that all of my mentors always pushed me to options and to just investigate and to explore, because for them, they had already done that in their career. And for me, it was like, maybe you should look at this. Maybe you should look at that. So I really appreciate that.
And have mentors been industry led? Like, have they all been from the industry that you're in, or have you sort of found someone outside to give a contrasting view? Have you ever tried that?
Yes. Actually, my mentor, who I don't know if he still considers me his mentor as of today, maybe not, but he works at the CDC and completely different.
CDC? Sorry, I don't know.
The Center for Disease Control.
Okay, right.
So he works there, and he's just been great in helping me understand how to pivot. And before we even thought about this year, he's just always been like, think about your next step. What do you want to do? Do you want to look at this in corporate? Do you want to do this in real estate? Do you want to do this in your personal life? And he was previously at a huge company, was recruited by CDC. And I mean, when you think of like transportation and then CDC, you wouldn't see the connection, but it's really supply chain at the end of the day. So it was just, he's been a great mentor to me.
And it's a bit of a provocative question, but do you think there's a difference between a mentor and a coach?
I do, because I feel like a mentor is more invested in you. Like coaches are definitely rooting for your success, but I feel like coaches are giving you the absolute playbook. Like I feel like my coach gives me the playbook and says, Christian, execute. And then my mentor is like, what are you doing? What do you want to do? They're more warm and fuzzy. And my coach is like, get in the ring. That's what it feels like anyway.
I think it's a really important point, because I've talked about this a few times on my podcast. And for me, a coach is someone who is, as you say, has a playbook, has a methodology behind them, and they are rooting for you. They're trying to accelerate or increase whatever it is, money, revenue, whatever. Where a mentor for me is someone who's already been there and done it, and sort of is giving you their experience and knowledge that they're sort of, and I like the idea that they're trying to initiate a thought process and curiosity and trying to make you think differently, which I think is a really nice distinction between the two.
Agreed.
So we've talked a little bit about diversity, but how do you deal with being a Black woman in corporate America?
You know, it's interesting because and maybe it's because of the schools that I've always attended. Like for myself, I've always been like one of 20 people that are of color in my classes until I went to college. So for me, it's the environment I've always been in. So it never looks different to me, but I definitely am always trying to see. And one thing I love about particularly my firm is that they are based in Europe and based in Germany. So, you know, it's a much different thought process, backgrounds, everything's different. And now that we have our offices in the Americas, I feel like our offices do somewhat resemble the ones in Europe, but you can definitely see in the metro areas where there are just more diverse populations than, say, Montana or Wyoming, that our offices reflect that. So I think for me, it's always to make sure that I am being a leader so that I can pave the way for someone else. That's like always my goal.
I think that's a fantastic idea. And you mentioned a couple of times about working for a German company and how German companies are coming into Atlanta. How do you think culturally that has affected business in Atlanta, but equally sort of wider, these sorts of companies coming into the US and sort of sharing a different cultural approach to things?
Well, I think especially in a city like Atlanta, we have so many transplants here, and they're not just from a neighboring state. They are from all over the world, all over the country. And I think that makes a huge difference in, we have a German-American chamber, and we have a French alliance. So you can go take French classes. We have the Latin American Association. There are so many just groups for specific Asian heritages that, whether it's journalism or just restaurant eats. Like, I think there's so many ways to immerse yourself in the city and around with people who are not like you or like you. And I think that's what attracts companies, is that not only do you have that, but you also have a ton of talent. And there's over 66 colleges and universities. So people are constantly you have a pipeline of talent too.
And you're also on the board of directors, Atlanta Real Estate Association. So we were talking right before we started about your volunteering, which is incredibly commendable. So just tell me a little bit about that role and sort of how they've got you involved in the sort of volunteer side of your interests.
Yeah. So actually, I'm not on the board of directors, but I am, I'm heading our emerging leaders this year. So I am actually helping people to understand where their money goes to when they pay their Realtor Association dues. Because as you know, with any industry dues that are due, you're like, why am I paying this again? What do I get? So I'm like the ROI reminder.
Yeah.
And, but also too, helping to groom that talent to understand that there can't just be, 20 volunteers or 100 volunteers out of 10,000 members. Like, we need your voice. We need to know what's going on in your area. And then I also am on the board of governors. So helping to really fuel the education for what we're giving and what we're offering. So I have a little problem with volunteering, and I'm stepping it back in 2021.
You're going to stop being so involved, are you? I
have 2 things on my plate versus 7, so that's good.
I'm going to drop in a quick question before we go into our 6 questions. How do you think young people are feeling in America? Do you think they're disenfranchised? As we're in COVID, in a pandemic where it's affecting unemployment and stuff, how do you think young people are feeling at this stage?
I think there has to be a feeling of, like, a mixed feeling of lost and purpose, because I feel like when things are taken away from you, it really shows you what's important. But again, at being young, you also just don't have as much of that frame of reference for experiences to say, how am I going to get out of this? How is this going to get better? So I think as much as you may see a purpose, you still seem somewhat lost, because you just don't have that playbook of life that we have, when it's like, when you're 35, when you're 30, when you're 40, that's a different, you've been through some things. But when you're just coming out, I can't imagine how it feels. And then, of course, you have these things called a phone that are telling you what you should feel and who you should be friends with and how you should dress, and all of that coming at you. I honestly cannot even imagine what it feels like in their minds. So I think it's a purposeful and lost at the same time is probably the feeling.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw on Netflix The Social Dilemma. Have you seen that?
I haven't yet. Everyone's telling me to watch it, and I'm like, I'm trying to redo my content. Can I watch it afterwards?
I only say it because you basically have coined a lot of what they say with young people with their phones. Like, they're always being engaged with notifications. They're always being buzzed by friends, and sometimes it's controlled by the provider. It's not always exactly when it comes through, and things like that. So that's why I asked you about social. I would watch it. It's interesting. I'm not
going to watch it.
I'm not anti social media, but I try to be a producer of social media rather than just a consumer. And I think that makes me feel better that I contribute as well as just consume, because I worry about kids that are just scrolling on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, whatever it is, just day in, day out of just consuming information. And just slightly political, and don't like going political, but it's interesting that on that program, they said, if you are white and middle class, and you will get information that what is deemed white and middle class people are interested in. If you're Latino, you're just going to get that message. So it's quite difficult to get a broad church of understanding about different cultures and different parts of the US, because you're just being funneled by the suggested and recommended on the content that you've been consuming.
It's true. I realized that there's a travel influencer. I absolutely love her, that I follow all the time. And I notice when I go to her post, all of a sudden she's from Canada. She's Black, and she's married to a white German man. And all of a sudden I get my whole entire feed is interracial couples. And I'm just like, what just happened? Like, it's so odd how it just takes you down this path. And I'm like, but I'm married. I haven't asked for this. Like, why am I getting this? Very weird.
I get also, which it fascinates me and scares me at the same time. It's like if I look on something on Amazon, if I want to buy something or I bought something, you suddenly see on Facebook or Instagram suddenly these adverts which are similar items to what you've bought, and you're like, I literally only just bought that 30 seconds ago, and now I'm suddenly influxed with all the other as well.
They're retargeting us like crazy. Like now I actually just speak into my phone and I'll say, like whatever thing, and just to see how many ads pop up over the next 48 hours. It's like my own social
I like that you're playing the system. Be as diverse as you like.
Like kettlebells. I need kettlebells.
All right, thank you, Christian. We're coming to the end of the conversation. It's been really enjoyable. I asked the 6 same questions I ask everyone. They're quick fire questions. They don't need a quick fire answer. It's up to you. First one is, what's the best decision that you made?
My best decision I ever made was marrying my husband, or actually I would say pursuing my husband.
Fantastic. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Save your money and your money will save you.
Nice. Who helped you most in your career? I know we've talked about mentors and coaches that you've had, but who has helped you most?
Oh, that's hard. You know what? I have to say my husband again. Yeah. He's there.
Is he there now?
He's not. I looked away like he was, but he's not.
Do you have any regrets?
I do. I do, but I don't. I regret not moving to Spain when I was going to move to Spain, but I didn't move to Spain because I met my husband. So it's kind of a double edge.
He didn't want to go to Spain.
No, he did not.
What are you most proud of?
I am most proud of really just I would say my life in general. Like my birthday was last week, and I said, I would have never imagined that would have been so much fun. And so I think it's definitely my life in a whole.
That's amazing. What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy means being able to give something that's beyond me. And when I'm gone, it's still there and it's still helping and making a difference in someone's life.
That's amazing. Thank you. And where can people find you?
So on social, I am at Christian Sold It, same as my website. Feel free, and on WhatsApp, you can find me there too.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Christian. Thank you so much for your time today. It was really interesting speaking to you.
Thank you. It's been fun.